Hello and welcome back, everyone, to episode 22 of the Have I Told You About This podcast? The one, the only YouTube show bold enough to take you on a journey each and every week, now twice a week, to wherever my mind takes me during the week. So, this week, I reminisced about one of my favorite arcade games of all time. What could that possibly be? How about Smash TV? I cannot tell you how much fun I used to have playing Smash TV in the arcades. And later as let's say yesterday, I was playing it on emulation at home. Now, I absolutely loved Robotron in the arcades. And having loved that as much as I did, Smash TV was just a natural progression of that gaming experience, and it was made by many of the same people. See, you couldn't miss this game in the arcades. Hey, you ever walk into an arcade and hear a game so loud, so chaotic, so absolutely unhinged that it felt like the game itself was yelling at you to come and play it? That was Smash TV. A game that didn't just sit quietly in the corner waiting for you to notice it. No. Smash TV announced itself like a deranged game show host, hopped up on neon and caffeine and pure 1990 action flick adventure and adrenaline. Now, before we start going deep into the game, I would love to thank those of you who watch the show and who like it and subscribe to it. You see, every like, every subscribe, every comment helps get the show noticed. Now, again, as I've said week after week, this isn't about monetization. It's just getting more eyes on the show so that we can have a bigger community and more conversation. So once again, for each and every one of you who've taken the seconds it takes to either like or subscribe, or just tell your friends about the show, or particularly comment down below, I thank you. Now, let's get on to the game. So you're already watching it here in the background. Smash TV hit the arcades in 1990. It was created by absolute legends at Williams, that same studio behind Robotron, Defender, and Narc. It was designed by Eugene Jarvis, who designed and programmed Robotron. It was also programmed by Mark Turmel. You might know that name from NBA Jam. And then it had art contributions from folks like John Tobias, who you know would later go on to co-create Mortal Kombat. So yeah, this game had a pedigree like few others did. But like most other Midway games, Smash TV never shied away from the action, the gore, and the comedy. But Smash TV wasn't just another shooter. It was a twin stick shooter. It was a satire. It was a spectacle, and it was a full body assault on your senses. Imagine a dystopian game show where contestants blast their way through wave after wave of enemies to win cash and prizes and the promise of fame. It was the Running Man meets Robotron, wrapped in neon, greed, and absolute chaos. And it was, and still is to this day, glorious. Now, the cabinet actually even pulled you in. Before you ever even touched the controls, Smash TV grabbed you by the eyeballs. The cabinet art was loud, like screaming loud. Bright reds, explosive electric blues, with explosions everywhere, and the smug face of the game show host plastered across the side, like he was daring you to step up in front of a live studio audience and take a shot at his game for your life. And the sound, as you're already hearing, oh man, the sound. The attract mode blasted through the arcade like a megaphone. Big money, big prizes. I love it. You could hear it from across the room, and you felt it in your chest. It was like the game was calling you by name. And honestly, that worked on me every single time. Now let's focus just a little bit on the gameplay. Okay, like I mentioned, Smash TV is a twin stick shooter. The left joystick moves you any direction, and the right joystick fires in any direction. No buttons, no reloading, no mercy. You're dropped into a series of square rooms, each one filled with enemies that spawn from typically 4 different directions, but they can come literally from anywhere. There's robots, there's mutants, there's rolling mines, exploding orbs, tanks, mutants. Everything in here, though, wants you dead. And the pacing? It's relentless. There's no breathing room. There's no safe corner. There's no way to let me think about this for a minute. You constantly are moving, and you better be. And also constantly shooting and constantly praying you don't get boxed in. And then the prizes you can win: cash, gold bars, flashy VCRs, toasters, vacuum cleaners, luxurious vacations. It was like somebody raided a 1990 Sears catalog and just dumped it all over the battlefield. It was absurd and hilarious, but it was perfect. You know, again, I go back to the first time that I ever played it. I still remember that time. I didn't even know what the game was. I just heard that the announcer screaming like he was trying to sell me a used car. And I thought, what's this? And I always look down at the control panel to see what I would be dealing with, because some games like Defender with its, 45 buttons, it's just too much. Especially for what should be a kind of a simpler game that it looks like. This game, those 2 sticks, that's all I needed to see. Robotron immediately jumped to my mind. And when I looked at the screen, there was Robotron, only so much cooler. I put in my quarters and I grabbed those joysticks, and within 5 seconds, I was overwhelmed. Enemies everywhere, bullets everywhere. Prizes were all across the screen, and they kept popping up like confetti. And I died and I died and I died fast. But that's when I just kept feeding it quarters. I wasn't mad. I wasn't even frustrated. What I was hooked. Because Smash TV didn't feel like any other game, not even like Robotron, really. It felt like an arcade equivalent of a roller coaster. It loud and fast and dangerous and absolutely addictive. I walked away from that machine and my heart was pounding, my hands shaking, but I knew next time when I would be back to Aladdin's castle, this was getting a good portion of my money. Let's talk a little bit about the geniuses behind the game. You see, Smash TV works because it was built on a simple idea. What if Robotron had a baby with a running man, with a dystopian game show? You see, Eugene Jarvis took that twin stick formula that he had perfected in Robotron, and then he cranked that dial up to 11. Bigger rooms, more enemies, more explosions, tons and tons of gore. When you die, your eyeballs pop up. It's crazy. Just more of everything. And then there was Mark Turmell's programming, which made it feel smooth, responsive, and brutally fair, like all of his games are. Even when it was absolutely destroying you, you knew you could have done better. It wasn't because the game was cheating. This wasn't just chaos for chaos' sake. It was designed chaos. Now, Smash TV wasn't a game full of hidden lore, but it did have some kind of fun secrets about it. There's hidden rooms that you could access by exiting certain rooms in specific directions and in a specific order. There's bonus rooms that are filled with nothing but prizes. Grab as many as you can before the time runs out. And then extra lives were tucked away behind certain enemy waves. You just had to find them. Always, too, it seemed like if I was on the left hand side of the screen, every good pop up would come on the right hand side of the screen. And that was by design. There's tons of Robotron DNA baked into the enemy patterns of this game too. If you and I've done this, put one Robotron up on one screen and put Smash TV up on the other, you can see particularly like the brain um, um, villains in Robotron. They move almost the same way as several waves of enemies in this game. And of course, the game show host over the top commentary was iconic. This game, nothing about it was subtle, but Smash TV wasn't trying to be subtle. Let's talk about just a couple gameplay tips that I can give you here too before we pop out. If you ever revisit Smash TV, and I think you should, it's in a lot of game compilations for consoles or emulation. Or hey, maybe you just want to sound like a pro on your podcast about it. Then here's some strategies. A, never stop moving. Standing still is a death sentence. The quickest way to die, the fastest, is just to try to stand still and shoot everything. You always have to be moving and anticipating where the next wave of baddies are coming from and pivot if you're wrong, and never, ever, ever stop shooting. Also, prioritize your power ups, specifically in this order: the spread gun, then missiles, then grenade launchers. That's the ticket to high scores. Learn the boss patterns. Mutoid Man, Scarface, and the Cobra Twins, they have predictable cycles. Usually getting behind them is the best way, if you can, and is the surest way to get rid of them the quickest. And then if you play the game co-op, divide your roles. One player should clear out enemies while the other grabs the prizes. It doesn't matter who grabs what, right? Trust me, that's the way to save lives in this game. And also, don't chase every prize. Some are actually put there as bait. A prize is put on a mine, and the minute you go over it, boom, you get blown up. You'll learn which one those are quickly. So, one of my favorite memories of Smash TV was playing in a co op match with a friend who absolutely just refused to do anything but grab the prizes. We'd be in the middle of the room and enemies pouring in every direction, and he'd yell, "Hold on, we got to get that VCR." And I'd be screaming, "We're going to die for a VCR?" And of course, we died repeatedly, spectacularly. But that's the magic of Smash TV. It wasn't just a game, this was a shared experience, and it was chaotic, ridiculous, and unforgettable. This game was received exceptionally well when it was put out initially. The critics absolutely loved it for its fast action, the humor, co-op gameplay. I mentioned the cabinet design and its replay value. Right? They're never the same game twice because you could even exit rooms differently. Players themselves loved the chaos and the violence, and of course the crazy prizes. But that announcer, it's almost like the announcer on NBA Jam. It just sticks with you. You big money, big prize. You can say those. You can put them on a T-shirt if you want. It actually became one of Williams' most successful early '90s arcade titles, and it did spawn home ports on basically every system that exists. So, in closing, Smash TV isn't just a retro game. Okay, it's much, much more than that. It's a time capsule. It's a snapshot of a moment when arcades were loud and dangerous and experimental and absolutely fearless. Just look at the level of gore, right? A moment in time when game designers took risks. You don't see a lot of that today with all the sequels and the remakes. This was a moment when cabinets screamed at you from across the room and dared you to step up and play. And Smash TV, it was the loudest, wildest, most unforgettable game of the era. Again, it didn't just entertain you, it overwhelmed you. And it certainly didn't just challenge you, it assaulted you. And it didn't just take your quarters, it earned them. And decades later, I can still hear that announcer in my head: big money, big prizes. I love it. And honestly, so do I. All right, that is this episode, as my mind drifted all the way back to Smash TV this week. And therefore, I had to spend a few hours replaying it again, and I couldn't have been happier with that time spent. Yep, I've got Resident Evil Requiem setting there. Yep, I've got Monster Hunter Stories 3 setting there and Pokemon Pocopia, but I still spend a couple hours in Smash TV. I have to admit, I'm not the best at the game, but that never stops me from wanting to continually see if I can beat my last high score. All right, thanks for joining me again on this trip through my memories. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And I hope you'll consider once again liking and subscribing and please commenting on the episode so that we can get more eyes on the show. What do you want to comment about? It it was just a show about a game. Well, tell me what you think. Did you ever play the game? Is Smash TV one of your favorites? Are there any secrets that you know that I didn't mention? What's your high score? Hit me up down in the comments and let me know. It'll help the show, and certainly you and I can have a wonderful discussion. All right. Thanks. And remember, big money and big prizes will be the death of you. Game on, friends. And I will see you back here again this week as we continue with Have I Told You About This? And now I've told you about Smash TV. See you next time.